Good morning, and welcome to the first ever, and hopefully the first of many, Women in Science Speak panel. Today, February 11th, is International Day of Women and Girls in Science, a day designated by the United Nations General Assembly in 2015, aiming to achieve full and equal access to and participation in science for women and girls and further achieve gender equality. In 2022, women make up 52% of the college-educated workforce, but only 29% of the STEM workforce. 50% of women in STEM careers drop out of their fields within the first 12 years. Women are typically given smaller research grants than their male colleagues, and while they represent 33.3% of all researchers, only 12% of members of national science academies are women. The gender gap in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics disciplines persists today, despite women making tremendous progress in other areas. The good news is research shows individuals with mentors have better academic, social, and economic prospects. For women in STEM fields, this becomes increasingly important as young women look to role models to help them gain their confidence and increase opportunities, all to pursue, persist, and exceed in STEM careers. And while today we will address this gap and how we make substantial change, we are also here to celebrate. You'll hear accomplished women doing amazing work, share their perspectives on pursuing careers in science, advancing allyship and mentorship, and achieving goals through self-advocacy. But first, I'd like to tell you about the sponsors of today's Women in Science Speak event. First, I'd like to mention Ashley Waters is the Executive Director of Women to Women Mentoring, and we're trying to get her onto the webinar as we speak. But you'll hear from Ashley probably toward the tail end of the panel. But let me tell you about Women to Women Mentoring. It is a Frederick County nonprofit providing women with guidance, support, and community connections through mentorship relationships. Through its core STEM and mentoring circle programs, Women to Women Mentoring offers women the opportunity to be heard, take action, move forward, and grow. Its innovative, effective programs combine the power of one-on-one mentoring, community building workshops, and opportunities to help women identify and work toward their goals in education, career, and life. To date, more than 400 women have worked with Women to Women Mentoring to gain new skills and perspectives, move to the next level, and build their futures. The other sponsor for today is the Frederick National Laboratory for Cancer Research and Leidos Biomedical Research. The Frederick National Laboratory for Cancer Research is the only U.S. national laboratory wholly focused on research, technology, and collaboration in the biomedical sciences, and is one of 42 federally funded research and development centers. The Frederick National Laboratory is sponsored by the National Cancer Institute and currently operated by Leidos Biomedical Research. The scientists at the Frederick National Laboratory conduct basic, translational, and applied research, create new technologies, and collaborate with government, industry, and academic colleagues. 2/3 of the laboratory's work is funded by NCI, and the third is funded by the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Thank you to Women Mentoring and the Frederick National Laboratory for Cancer Research for partnering on this important event today. I'm very excited to get started, so let's do just that. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Ethan Dimitrowski, Laboratory Director, Frederick National Laboratory for Cancer Research, and President of Leidos Biomedical Research, who will introduce today's keynote speaker. Ethan?
Thanks so much. Good morning, everyone. I'm so pleased to be part of this inaugural educational event, Women in Science Speak, and really eager to hear from our distinguished panelists. Let me begin by thanking the organizers of this meeting, Ann Gill, Dr. Maggie Scully, Elaine Lowe, Jennifer Alexander, Christo Kanja, and Dr. Ashley Waters, as you've heard from Women to Women Mentoring. Let's begin by thanking them for their service. As a father of 3 daughters, I want them to have every opportunity to choose any field of interest to them, including STEM. With so many STEM challenges that we face, why would we engage only half the populace to solve them? Medicine and science require diverse contributors. Why? Because diverse teams are the most productive ones. Thus, promoting diversity is both in our self-interest and the right thing to do. By a happy coincidence, I am already collaborating with today's keynote speaker, Dr. Carla Williams, on a new diversity in cancer research program sponsored by the American Cancer Society. Dr. Williams is Associate Professor of Medicine and Public Health at Howard University College of Medicine. She's also the Interim Director of the Howard University Cancer Center. Dr. Williams' research addresses critical issues of health equity affecting African Americans and other underrepresented communities, with an emphasis on cancer health disparities. She leverages the power of diverse partnerships to advance science. As an executive scientist at Howard, Dr. Williams connects researchers with each other and external collaborators like us, who broaden the communities that confront health disparities needs. Engaging the community in the planning of clinical trials helps build trust in that research and actually leads to greater participation, particularly in communities of color. Dr. Williams developed a course at Howard that develops and builds skills for community engagement as a key discipline in public health, healthcare research, and public policy. As I mentioned, I'm working closely with Dr. Williams and her colleagues at Howard through an American Cancer Society initiative. Howard is one of the 4 historically Black medical schools selected for this new Diversity in Cancer Research program. As an American Cancer Society professor, I'm particularly pleased to serve as a mentor to Howard faculty and trainees. So please join me in warmly welcoming our keynote speaker, Dr. Carla Williams. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Ethan, for such a warm welcome. And let me also relay my thanks to everyone who's been involved in putting this great event together. When Anne reached out to me about joining this distinguished panel today, she asked me, would I be a keynote speaker? And I said to her, Anne, I'm not a keynote type of speaker. I'm more of a fireside chat type of person. But I said, I'll do my best. I'll bring my best to the task. And I thought we would still be having an intimate conversation with mentors and emerging scientists and women in STEM. And then I learned that there were well over 200 registrants for this event. So that changed the game a little bit and definitely brought some nerves to my process. And so as I was trying to figure out, okay, what do I have of value that I can bring to this audience and this esteemed panel? What is it that I really have to say? Do I have anything to offer? And I started getting into that space. And then luckily my training kicked in. I'm trained traditionally as a clinical psychologist. And one of the things we learn about is something called parallel process, which means that when we observe a phenomenon happening in one setting or environment, and we see it being mirrored in another setting or environment, that's something for us to pay attention to. So I said to myself, if I, after 30 plus years in the field of STEM science, am feeling and asking these questions of myself, what value do I bring? What do I have to offer? Then what must emerging scientists, emerging women scientists feel when they begin to walk into these spaces, into these laboratories, into these rooms, into these classrooms? May they be asking themselves the same questions. What value do they bring? What do they have to offer? So I said, maybe it would be important to speak to that. So that's what I'm going to try to do today. As you saw from the header slide, that there's a theme, and 2 of the pieces of the theme were easy, to discuss my thoughts on mentoring and to celebrate mentors, because I have definitely been a beneficiary of wonderful mentors over the course of my career. But I was also asked to, as I said, say something inspiring to mentees and to women emerging in science. And so as I thought about what can be inspirational, I said, well, let me lean on the things that I know and my particular gifts. And as I started thinking about giftedness, a proverb that a colleague shared with me at an event over the holidays came to mind, one that I wasn't really quite familiar with, but it resonated with me. And that is that your gifts make room for you. Your gifts are unique to you. Your gifts were designed especially for you. And we have the privilege of being the bearers of those gifts that were created and designed for us. And to know that those gifts that we carry will make room for us in the spaces that we enter. To me, that is an inspiring thought. It's a comforting thought. As I, of course, when you're planning a talk, I said, well, let me ask Google what Google might think of this. So I tried to see what other people thought about what that proverb and that phrase really means. And one that I ran across really resonated with me because it said, not only do your gifts make room for you, but they announce your presence. And so for women walking into spaces maybe for the first time, and maybe you're the first even in your generation to even conceive of a career in the sciences, to know that your gifts will announce your presence, I think is a valuable idea to hold, so that when we do present ourselves in these different environments, that we know that we are intended to be there. Of course, gifts are something that we have to respect as well, which means that we do have to develop, we do have to hone, we do have to sharpen, we do have to practice. Just as we're watching the Olympics play out in Beijing right now, we have to think about all of the work and all of the efforts that have gone into those Olympians coming to that space and knowing that the work that they've put in is going to speak for them. And that's something else I think I would like for you to take home with you, is that it's really not about those bibliometrics that we think about in science. It's really not about making that impression and putting that pressure on ourselves to have someone else tell us our value. And I am from the South in the United States. And so to those wonderful scientists who created bibliometrics for us to measure the value and the impact of science, I can say to them, bless their hearts. And not to disparage the bibliometrics, but I want to make sure that we understand that's not the way that we should measure our value in science. I think that one of the ways that we can really understand how our gifts make room for us is to realize that we have to bring our authentic selves to the process, and realizing that we're not there to perform for a laboratory director. We're not there to impress an audience. We're really there to bring our own power to that space. And you can only do that in your true authenticity. One thing that I have learned across my journey is two things: that we have to embrace the journey, and we do have to trust the process. And it may sound trite, and I would agree, but it's still true that our journeys can take us in so many different directions. And we don't really know what the end is going to be. And we have to have enough faith to trust in that process. And to illustrate that, I'm going to just very quickly share a picture of my scientific journey and talk about how I had to trust, and I'm still learning to trust in the process. Some of you may be familiar with this graphic. It's from the National Institutes of Minority Health and Health Disparities, and it's a framework for understanding how we should approach this science of health disparities and health equity. And it simply communicates the fact that we really have to think about the disparities and inequities and injustices that we see in health and healthcare at multiple levels. That we know just targeting one single factor at one single level is not going to move the needle on these intractable problems. And so this matrix helps us to think about how can we tie these factors and these systems together. And so what you're seeing here is something I created for myself. And you see all these lines and dots and X's that mark different spots along my journey. As I started my graduate program, I had a very specific target and goal, but spaces were opened up for me. Spaces were created for me. Doors and pathways were open that created and offered opportunities. And I stepped into those. And in those spaces, my gifts began to grow and emerge. So if I mapped myself, I moved from my core, which is health behaviors, and I had to understand how the biology factors into that. And I just moved, hither and yon. And it wasn't sort of a helter-skelter. It was really something that was intended for me, even though I didn't really know and couldn't conceive of where I would end up, which is now doing work in the space of understanding the societal structures and how they impact upon our efforts. So I'm going to stop sharing this so I can go back and just try to have more conversation with you all. And that's just to say, again, trust the journey, embrace the journey and trust the process, because what you are bringing to the table definitely has value and it will emerge over time. And that's where I can touch on mentoring, because in my experience, and I do hope my mentor, she texted me just earlier saying she was trying to get in. I hope that one of my many mentors has been able to get on today, and that's Dr. Lucille Adams Campbell, one of my primary mentors that I've had, but I've had many wonderful women mentors, many wonderful Black women mentors. And it is important when we can be mentored and supported by those who understand some aspects of our experiences. Although it's not required, it can definitely benefit us. And what Dr. Adams Campbell did, well, I want to take a step back and just talk about how I got into my academic journey. And that was through one of my earliest mentors, Dr. Sherry Moloch, who is actually still in practice here in DC area, I believe at George Washington University. And when I applied for graduate school, I applied to 3 schools and I got 3 outcomes. I was not accepted to one, I was waitlisted, and I was accepted to Howard. And a few weeks ago, a medical school applicant asked me, well, why did I come to Howard? And students always ask that question, and I come up with some random answer or such. But this time I actually just spoke a truth, my truth, which was I came here because I was accepted. And I thought about that and I said to her, I came because I accepted and I stayed because I was accepted. There was a space that was made for me here, and that was through mentors who identified my potential, mentors who made spaces for me to move into diverse communities. Dr. Omitha Lewis Jack was one of those mentors who created a space for me to start working across cultural diversity. And as I said, Dr. Adams Campbell, who made a space for myself and my colleagues, a group of women who looked like me and came from similar backgrounds. And we all sat and learned together and built community. We built a space of community, and she created the opportunity for us to do that. And it was a safe space, but I learned from a colleague I've recently met, Dr. Bruce Purnell, that these spaces are also brave spaces. And what he means by that is that we come into those spaces where we're growing as scientists and we don't know all the answers, and we're not supposed to. And I hope that students understand that you're not supposed to know all the answers, and things aren't always supposed to work out, and they're not always going to be easy. But step into that brave space where you embrace that challenge. And from that, you will begin to grow and hone and sharpen those skills and those abilities and gifts. And so I think understanding that when we step into that brave space, our challenge and our assignment really is to do the work, to bring our authenticity to the work of science, and understanding that that work is about skill building, that work is about exploring and discovering and experiencing the challenges that come along with that. But in that safe and brave space, I think we get to what mentoring really is about. It creates spaces of intention, spaces of setting goals for ourselves, spaces of finding our purpose, and understanding those gifts, skills, and abilities helps us to understand the purpose with which we're here. It creates a space where we can express and develop our passions for science and ultimately understand why we're really here, what the assignment really is. And as I said, the assignment is not to impress. The assignment is not to build up bibliometrics. The assignment is really bigger than that. The assignment is to do what scientists do, which is to search out and uncover and understand truth and knowledge and put that truth and knowledge into the service of mankind. And in that, emerging STEM scientists, you really are changing the world. In small ways, in every way that you embrace this profession, you are truly changing the world. And so with the last note of the theme for today, which is to inspire, I'll apply one more of my guess, which is kind of esoteric, and it's just this sort of affinity for words and understanding the evolution of words. And when I look at the concept of inspiration and inspiring someone and being inspired, I look at it a little differently. Not that there's something that I'm trying to impart to you to inspire you, put something in, but to have you turn a mirror on yourself and look at what's already inside, that spirit that you already carry, that gift that you already carry, and understand, yes, that a space has already been made for you and will announce your presence. So thank you all for the opportunity to share and be a part of this wonderful discussion and this wonderful celebration today.
Thank you, Carla. I just love the reference of your gifts and brave spaces. You really put a perspective on mentoring and mentoring a new generation of scientists and engaging communities that have been unrepresentative in research, and you've really painted this brighter future for us all. So now I'd like to introduce Maggie Scully. Dr. Maggie Scully is the Partnership Development Manager for the Frederick National Laboratory's Partnership Development Office. She began her career as a scientist after earning her bachelor's degree in bioengineering from Lehigh University and her master's and PhD in biomedical engineering from Stony Brook University. Dr. Scully.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you, Dr. Williams, for sharing your wisdom and experience. Before I introduce our panelists, I'd like to give a big shout out to all the students celebrating International Day of Women and Girls in Science, both those in Frederick, Maryland, and nationally and internationally, especially our bright friends at Arundel High School in Zimbabwe. Hello, and thanks for joining us. As Dr. Williams mentioned, let's make a space for international national women in science. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our wonderful, esteemed group of panelists. First, we have Dr. Mary Kearney. She's a senior scientist and head of the Translational Research Section and Deputy Program Director of the HIV Dynamics and Replication Program at the National Cancer Institute. Uma Muduri is Acting Director of the Advanced Biomedical Computational Sciences Group at the Frederick National Lab. Dr. Stephanie Mummert is Primary Patent Examiner at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Dr. Ruth Nusinoff is Senior Principal Scientist and Head of the Computational Structural Biology Section at the Frederick National Lab. And Dr. Jana Ognjenovic is Team Lead of the Advanced Cryo-Electron Microscopy Technology Group at the Frederick National Lab. You can learn more about our panelists' background at the link we've included in the chat. Please use the chat throughout the event to pose questions to our panelists. Please make sure you send it to everyone. They'll respond to as many as possible. So let's begin. Our first question is on the topic of mentorship, and I'll ask all of our panelists to respond. How have you benefited from your mentoring relationships? Jana, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Maggie. I would just like to thank you for this great honor to being part of this wonderful panel. Back to your question. So basically, when I look back, I have benefited from my mentors in a strikingly similar manner. Although quite distinct in character, my mentors encouraged me to be independent when pursuing scientific ideas and projects. And I would say equally significant, I learned from the mentors how to identify, define, and approach a scientific question in a clear and focused way. In the conversations with them, I learned what worked for them on their scientific path, what are some mistakes to avoid. For instance, they would encourage me to start some challenging projects, but they were also there to help me loosen a grip when it's necessary, or to wrap up a project, or sometimes heartbreaking to end some projects that were not working at the time. So basically, from my mentors, I learned how to embrace the challenge, but also how to navigate stormy scientific seas.
Thank you, Yana. Uma, can you take it from here?
Maggie. Yeah, thank you, Maggie. And I would like to say thank you to all of the organizers of the event as well. And on mentorship, I think listening to Carla, I was just amazed at how much of an overlap it had with some of the same experiences that I had. My mentoring relationships were very, very informal, right? These were almost developed on the go, where they taught me some amazing things. More than the technology or the subject itself, it was about thinking through what I was doing, understanding my assumptions, knowing that validation was critical, knowing that, I really needed to know that if I write a program saying, hey, give me a gene list, it's going to give me a list, but it's up to me to kind of validate and see that that's the right list, right? In bioinformatics, especially, that was really critical. They also gave me visibility. I mean, even as a junior, I was allowed to present to some amazing scientists. They built my confidence. They gave me a room to grow. They were just open to any of my ideas. They treated me as an equal. They were saying, hey, good job whenever there was something that I had to contribute. And I would also say that they taught me that amazing scientists don't carry an ego. They were so humble. I was just amazed. I would walk into a room almost literally scared to speak anything. And they were, literally, treating me as an equal in a room full of these accomplished scientists. So I would say, I benefited a lot from all of these mentoring relationships.
That's terrific. And Stephanie, can you address the question?
Oops. Oh, thank you. I had to unmute myself. Yes, thank you so much for including me in this panel. This is very exciting. And like everyone, to get here, I was definitely mentored along the way. Starting all the way back in high school, my physics teacher invited me to a summer program, and I was like, oh, wow, science is amazing. And then, all throughout the different stages of my career, I've had somebody, taking me, by the hand and helping me along the way. And thinking about what Carla said, and thinking back on my career, I think those kinds of mentors can really make the difference between someone who likes science and someone who chooses it as a career. And I've enjoyed becoming a mentor myself. Like as was mentioned in the beginning, I've participated in women to women mentoring, and it was super exciting for me to meet other scientists and to talk about with the fellow mentors, and then also the mentoring relationship. You learn a lot from the people that you're mentoring, and not just the people that have mentored you. So, yeah.
Okay, Mary, how have you benefited from your mentoring relationships? Mary, are you on? Did we lose you? How about we turn to Ruth? I don't know if it's just me or I'm not able to hear Mary at this point. And then we can turn to Mary after Ruth. Ruth, how have you benefited from your mentoring relationships?
Well, first of all, I would like to, can you hear me? Everything's
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Okay, so first of all, I think it's a great, a great organization now, and the webinar and the collection of women that you have here and what has been said, much of it I totally agree. I would only like to add something, I mean, a different angle from my own standpoint. It's a little different from what we have heard so far, in that I got my master's at Rutgers just before I gave birth to our first one, a boy. I then took 8 years off. I had a second, then I had a third, and then I went back to school. When I wanted to get back to Rutgers, we just, we were back and forth. I'm Israeli, came back again. My husband was at Princeton. So I went back to Rutgers. I knew I had a very short time to do it. My husband was just at a sabbatical. One of the admission committee members looked at me and said, well, Ruth, you have 3 small children. How are you going to do it? And you have only at most 2 years. So he was sort of very skeptical. But there was also a young professor who came, a young assistant professor who came from Cambridge, UK, and he agreed to take me as a student. And I owe him, he is not someone that's known. His name is George Pichenik. But I owe him a huge thank you, a huge gratitude in that what he has done is essentially, he told me the new developments. At the time it was sequencing, Sanger methods, and then of course the other methods to sequence. And he said, well, where we have sequences, DNA sequences, we don't have approaches or algorithms or methods to fold our long RNA sequences. Why don't you try? And so that was a fantastic suggestion. Then later he said to me, are you really trying to do this? Because he went on a trip, came back 2 weeks later, and I said, George, yes, that's what I have been doing. So what I'm trying to say with this, my own biography, it is possible even for women with small children who take time off to raise the children and then go back to school. It's possible to do if you have, or it's helpful, have an advisor who is supportive and gives you a good direction. The rest of it, he gave me independence. So with that, I'll turn the mic back so that I'm not over time.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you. It really goes to what Dr. Williams was talking about, of making space. Mary, I hope you're here, although I see a caution sign next to your name. If you're here, please speak up. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next question, and we can give you more time later on. Okay, we're going to move on. Now we'll consider the role of education in preparing for a career in science. Many of you talked about earlier mentoring and then later on in your career. So this question is for Yana and Uma. What factors do you consider in pursuing your graduate education? Yana?
Yeah, so I was actually primarily looking at specific research program and whether science that's being done in particular lab would keep me up at night and on weekends, like whether I would be passionate about it. I was also looking at the ability of a mentor to support students and postdocs and to publish effectively. So that was another important aspect. Another thing I looked at is what new methodology and new techniques will I learn and put into my toolbox. So Another important thing that was on my checklist for the graduate education lab was to be in a lab that will offer me infrastructure and opportunities to do collaborations, learn new techniques, and as I said, like do collaborations through mentors, connections, and contacts. So basically, those were my bullet points when I was choosing the right lab for my graduate studies.
Great. And Uma, can you speak about your experience?
Sure, Maggie. So I would say I was kind of all over the place. I knew I wanted to be in science. I think that much I kind of knew right in high school that it was going to be science or math. My career choice and my graduate program choice was mostly based on what was available to me, you know, the general awareness of all of the different options that were there. And what I did not like to do more than what I actually wanted to do, right? I wasn't really passionate about anything. I just had too many varied interests. Oh, genetic engineering sounded cool. Biochemistry was also good. Microbiology was also good. So I said, you know, I got into genetic engineering and that was my first choice. So I did genetic engineering. And after that, you know, I was in a lab as a research fellow. Molecular biologist, I quickly learned that I did not enjoy it, didn't have the patience for it. I was generally just not good at it, right? But I really loved the analysis that came right after. BLAST and such programs and bioinformatics were just coming up. So I said, you know, maybe I should do bioinformatics. I got into bioinformatics. I just loved bioinformatics, learned about databases. And actually only after I joined my current group, right, the ABCS, I got to work with some really large databases, and I found that I was very, very passionate about it. The large-scale data mining is where my current interests are. And since the past 15 years, you know, they keep me up at night. I keep dreaming about data. So, so that's how I ended up, you know, in the bioinformatics world, I would say.
That's so great to hear. You made the right choice. Mary, it's great to have you back. Maybe we can just revisit the question of how you benefited from your mentoring relationships.
Okay, let's try this again, and I hope it works now. Technology is not working in my favor today. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The video might be having a little problems, but okay, so I'm so sorry about the technical issues here. Obviously I have benefited greatly from mentoring, especially scientifically, and I heard most of your answers, I think, where you all talked about your wonderful mentoring experiences, and those are very, very important. And I think it's especially important for women to have women mentors as well. I think it's important not only for to have women as role models, but also to have women to confide in when you maybe have some challenging experiences or even adverse events, which happens in every field, of course. But I also just wanted to highlight that sometimes there are bad mentoring experiences. And if the mentor is not a good match for you, then it's okay to leave that mentoring relationship. And not every lab has a really wonderful, healthy environment. Some are actually quite toxic, and hopefully those, you know, problems can be addressed in time, and those situations can change when they occur. But it is okay if you don't have a good mentoring experience to leave that situation and that relationship. I also think it's important to have many different mentors so that if you do have challenging experiences, there is someone that you can go to for help, advice. And mentoring relationships are not just one way. And I think someone here already mentioned this, but we learn a lot from our peers, which is peer mentoring, which is really important, and also from the individuals that we're mentoring. And then the relationship goes both ways. And I have learned so much from people in my lab, the postdocs and the postbacks, in how to guide them to help them get to where they would like to be and achieve their goals. And I've learned from them and how they set those goals and how they communicate with me and tell me where they feel supported and where they're not feeling supported, so that I can, you know, meet their needs and help them to achieve their dreams.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, now we gonna fast forward to a few questions. Stephanie, you're in a scientific career outside the laboratory. How is your background important to your job as a patent examiner?
That's a great question. To put it simply, we're scientists first, and then we apply the relevant patent laws. My office hires scientists trained in a particular discipline, and then they train us how to apply that knowledge to being patent examiners. And I'm not sure how familiar our audience is with patenting or with patent law, so I'll try to explain it really quickly. At a high level, what we do in any area or specialty or technology is compare what an inventor says they've done to what's already existing in the literature and any kind of printed publication. Then we take a deep dive into what's in the literature and try to determine if what is being claimed is actually sort of, and to kind of just, you know, put a little plug in for my agency. We're surrounded by things that are patented in our daily lives, from our phones, toys, computers, and in biology and chemistry, and those kinds of more specific disciplines. And in mine, my tech center is focused on biotechnology, but my specific section, all of our applications are linked by the concept of amplification. So we get applications that are looking at detecting a particular type of mutation or improving upon amplification to make it faster, more specific, that kind of thing. And yeah, so the science part of it is crucial to understanding when something is invented and when it isn't. Yeah. And yeah, and so I will also say, for anyone that might be interested in what I do, there's a whole training process to come in. So you don't have to be an attorney or know the law coming into the process of becoming a patent examiner. You just have to know the science enough, and then they'll teach you how to do the rest of it.
That's a great segue to our next question about networking and fostering a community, and especially a community of women in science. So what can we do to open more doors and make more space for women in science? This question will start with Mary. You're muted, I think. I hope.
Yes, I was muted. Okay. So I think there's a lot of work being done to open doors for women in science, and there's been a lot of progress, I think, in this area. The leaky pipeline, I think, is almost more of a problem. So to open the doors, of course, we want to do outreach to young women, young girls, get them interested in science, show them, you know, where the opportunities are for education and for career opportunities. But I think we have to go beyond opening those doors and making sure that women are supported once they're there. And so the NIH is amazing at this. The NIH has lots of training opportunities, leadership, learning leadership skills, and a lot to support women and young scientists. But I still think we have to go a lot further than that and make sure that women really feel safe in science. This idea that you have to be tough or you have to be thick-skinned to be a scientist is not appropriate, in my opinion. I think if a woman sets a boundary and says, I'm not okay with this, I'm not comfortable with this, that's a strong woman, right? A woman who thinks she has to be tough and tolerate a situation that might not be a healthy situation. That's not being strong, that's allowing yourself to be mistreated, which is actually not being strong. So I think that really making sure that women feel supported, feel okay if they have a situation they're not comfortable with, to speak up, to report it, to tell others, and then when they do, to be supported in that. So yeah, so opening doors, I think there's a lot of work. The Women Scientist Advisors, which I served on that committee in the NCI, and also I serve currently for the NIH, is a lot of work being done to recruit women, to retain women, to promote women. You know, I just think that there's still more that needs to be done to make sure that we're fully supported so that we don't leave the field before we get to leadership positions, which is what is currently happening.
Uma, would you like to add to that?
Sure, Maggie. I echo what Mary said, right? I think general awareness is, of course, key. Letting girls and women know the breadth of science. There's so much that you can do. You can be passionate about a specific subject, like what Yana shared, or you can be all over the place like me, or you can kind of say, you know, pursue multiple interests, right? So you may be good at informatics, you may be good at organizational skills, you may be good at certain lab skills, doesn't really matter. There's so much that we can contribute to. I think raising that general awareness is going to be key. And also, like what Mary said, I think having a flexible environment and a respectful environment is key for any of us to continue in the work. I enjoyed that, and I was grateful to have found that work environment at ABCS and FML. And for me, I think usually when you're entering into a career, I think maybe like what Ruth was saying, you were also starting a family. So, young families and having, babies and toddlers at home, I really actually appreciated having a daycare in the facility as well. Science is just not a 9-to-5 job, right? I didn't have to stop my idea in between to go take care of my son or worry about a snow delay or a snow closure. I could just take him back to work, and he was playing right next to me, and I was continuing, the work that I was in until it completed, sort of, right? So having that flexibility, the versatility in the work environment, and that general respectfulness too. I think I was lucky, and I'm still lucky to have found that work environment where everyone just appreciates the work we do and nothing else really matters, where science is the key, and all of us know that that's the most topmost priority.
Terrific, thank you. So an important theme for today's event, of course, is mentorship. So at, oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a question. I see the slide now. And this is something that Mary brought up about leadership roles. So as head of a research section, how do we encourage, foster a community of women in science? So Ruth, would you like to address this question?
Yes. So actually, this is a great question. And what I would like to say in this regard, so there are two, for me personally, there are two issues here. One is indeed being the head of a research section. And in this particular situation, I think it's very important to support women. As an example, again, from my own career or role in such a situation, I had when I have positions to hire postdocs, I had one application which looked really good, but the woman had 4 small children. I looked at what she had done, and I looked at her recommendations. I was very impressed, and I took her. People around me at the NIH and elsewhere were telling me, Ruth, what are you doing? Do you think that a woman with 4 small children can actually work, publish, be productive, and make progress? And I said, I don't see why not. I started my PhD with 3 small children, and it went very well. And I never, on the contrary, it helped me. It's sort of course, you are busier, but still it is possible to do. And that particular lady did extremely well, and now she's a full professor in a university. The other aspect that I would like to mention is in my roles, I had multiple such roles as an editor-in-chief. Especially, I'm thinking now in PLOS, where this happened. In trying to recruit, to have a gender balance in our editorial board, and trying to make sure that we recruit as associate editors women, I must say that even though there are many very good women scientists who could take this up, they declined. So the way I interpreted it, they worried. I mean, they had families, they had small children, small or a little older children, and they worried. And of course, there are scientific careers, etc., teaching and everything that we have to do in universities. Grant writing, and they hesitated to take it because how are they going to juggle those roles? This is not right. I mean, I understand, of course, the concerns, but it is possible. So what I'm trying to say, to say is it's not just the leadership itself that should be encouraged to hire women for certain positions. It's also the women themselves who are invited, and then they're just a little afraid, concerned, how are we going to do it? And they declined. And of course, it may affect their careers. So I think there are these two aspects that we have to take. It's not only the leadership above you, it's also the woman herself. It has to be encouraged. It's okay, it's doable.
Thank you, Ruth, for that real world experience. Mary, as a research section head, how do you encourage and foster women?
Well, I think that women are more likely to have imposter syndrome, and to maybe question their own abilities or even value as a scientist. And I will say I had that issue. And so I actually probably didn't climb the ladder maybe as fast as I could have, because I was willing to sort of take maybe a lower title or a lower salary than what I probably could have had earlier in my career. But I just felt so grateful to be able to do science. And so I think that some women may feel like I did, and that is, I'm so grateful to be here, and I'm so grateful to my ancestors who fought for us to be able to have the careers that we dreamed of. And so I felt like, who am I to then ask for more, right? When that doesn't do any good for myself or for future generations. But I felt so grateful to be in the NIH that I just didn't really push myself, probably, I think, as much as I could have to be in these leadership roles. And I doubted even my own abilities to be able to do it. And so I think that maybe just communicating to women that you're not lucky to be in your position. They are lucky to have you in that position, that you're skilled, you're valuable, that if you see a job opportunity, even if you're missing one or two, skills on that list, that's okay. Those skills you can build on the job. You can get mentorship on the job, to not doubt yourself, to push yourself. And then when you're in a position that is a higher level position and you're a little bit outside of your comfort zone, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to feel like, gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. I need help here. And just to keep growing. And that's how you grow, and that's how you learn. And, we had a speaker one time, Dr. Victoria Rashan, who's CEO of a biotech pharmaceutical company. And she said she has a mentor because it's her first time being CEO, right? So, as long as you grow and as you face new challenges and a steep learning curve and you're making mistakes, and rather than feel like, gosh, I'm not good at this, I'm a failure, just, think, okay, I'm growing, I'm learning. There are things I still don't know, need help with, and get mentorship and guidance through those times.
Thank you so much. And judging by all the head nods, I think we can all really relate to that imposter syndrome. So great transition. At what point in your career should you seek out a mentor? This question is for Yana and then Mary.
Yeah, so I would say practically at each turn and point during career development, one needs a mentor. And as we mentioned several times already, mentor could be a senior student, a postdoc when you're a graduate student, or a colleague, not necessarily a PI or professor. Someone who been through that path that you're trying to embark on at that point. So someone who will help you smooth that learning curve. And mentors they don't only give advice and guidance, but they are often role models. So it is critical for successful career to have mentors along the way. I would say at each step. So there's no specific point in time to get a mentor, but it's always good to have mentors along the way.
Thanks. And Mary, you touched upon this. Do you want to expand on?
Yes, I already did touch upon it, so I won't say much except for to say, so at what point in your career? Well, all points, right? So, but start as young as possible. And especially, I think women or anybody who's from a from a family where there have been scientists in the family before and you don't even know, what are the first steps, the second steps, how do you even get into graduate school? It's really important to start even as an undergraduate or even as a high school student to get mentorship and figure out all the steps along the way to get to where you want to be with your career.
Absolutely. Thank you. So let's talk about the value of mentoring. Did you ever hit a rough patch in your career? And how did your mentor support you through that process? Ruth, would you like to address this?
So naturally, I mean, this is obvious that a good mentor helps a huge amount. I mean, I think everybody would agree to that. You need encouragement, but also it is suggesting, first of all, if papers come back or something like this, you say, it's okay. I just had this thing happen with someone that I mentor. It's okay. It happens to everybody. Just keep going, revise, resubmit. It's not the end of the world. So, but also I think at the same time, it's the guidance that it's important to look and try to address it, not just to sweep it under the carpet, and always try to improve. Try to improve as far as the questions that you address, the background, the methods, looking at the results, everything that goes along with it. So a mentor has to encourage, but I think also under such circumstances suggest how to go, how to address the problem. So encouragement is important, but not enough.
Thank you. Stephanie?
I'm probably going to touch on something that has been mentioned already is the rough patches for me. The hardest point was transitioning to becoming a mom. And that's probably one of the parts where it's very easy for people to sort of step away from their careers because it's hard to do both. But for me, I was lucky because the full-time job that I have is also a work from home job. So I've been telecommuting full time since 2008. So it made it much easier to make that transition while not having to commute to my office like I did when I was earlier in my career, and having an understanding. In this case, my boss, having an understanding boss who was patient. Patience is really the key in having somebody that makes it okay that you maybe don't know how to do it all from day one. It's a learning process. And so having a mentor that, and honestly, other moms that work is also kind of a helpful thing, being patient with yourself and learning, that you don't know everything and you can, acknowledge that, but do better the next day and not give up. So.
I can just add, I totally agree with Stephanie, totally agree. To listen, to accept, yes, and to make it possible.
You have to accept that you can't, you maybe don't know everything, and but you can learn how to balance everything.
Everybody is just
coming on that, right?
We are all people, right?
Yeah.
This is the approach. We are all people, so one has to be considerate, otherwise considerate in problems and considerate in contributions, try and recognize who contributed what, and if there are problems, support, absolutely.
Thank you. So our next question goes to becoming advocates. Women excel at advocating for others, and I think we've seen that by everybody's answers in various ways, but we don't always speak up for ourselves. How can women become self-advocates? Uma?
I think, Maggie, as you said, it's a really hard thing to do, right? I think early on, I don't think I was confident. I don't think I even thought it was necessary to do something like that, right? I wanted the work to speak for itself. It was more like, hey, I love what I'm doing. And if it's good enough, then things are just going to automatically happen. But then, and some did. I do have to say that I was in a group that did really appreciate the work, and some of those doors were automatically open for me. But I also learned that sometimes, if there is something specific that you want, you need to go be clear about it, right? Make that really clear and say, hey, this is, maybe I want to know about a particular technology or project, a position. Maybe sometimes it's salary. It doesn't really matter. But knowing those specifics and having a clear communication sometimes I think helps. And once you have that first communication, then to not let go. You have to be consistent at it, right? I mean, if you want it, then you really have to prioritize that. And nobody else is going to do that for you. If it's important for you, then you're the only one who can make it happen, who can work towards it. And so I would say keeping it simple, specific, and being consistent about it is going to be key if you really want something.
Uma, would you say that this is special to women or is it general?
I think I would say this is very general, Ruth, because I think it depends on the personality rather than men or women. I think I've seen some who are really good at advocating for themselves, didn't matter if it was men or women, and some, personality-wise, who were just not good at that, right? So you usually just want to stay in the back bench, sort of.
Yana, do you want to expand on this?
Yeah, like I can just echo what Uma said. Ruth, I think it's actually more like pronounced with women. For some reason, like we tend to be shy when it comes to self-advocating, whereas like when you need to advocate for someone else, you can make a compelling case. But that's why I would just say there is no reason to why women should shy away from advocating for themselves, and we should break that shy barrier. Especially when it's supported by merit and credible evidence of ability. So I don't think the approach should be drastically different or special when it comes to women, just the same as what we would do for any other colleague we deem needed advocating for.
We have our final elusive $1 million question. How do we maintain a quote unquote work-life balance while achieving our research and professional goals? Ruth, would you like to address this?
Of course, this is, as you say, the $1 million question. It's not easy. And I must say, at least personally, you always have some guilt feelings that you are not doing enough for your family. But I think the key is to recognize that it's just not possible, and you do what you can. And eventually, I think the kids recognize that and are proud to have mother and father, both. But we are now talking about women who still made progress, had some accomplishments, etc., definitely. And it affects the kids. That's my impression. But of course, you have to try. And I remember very well when the kids were small and friends will come over and I will sit on the side and still work and be available to them and work. So yes, and of course, you have to take here, there, doctor's appointment and whatever, maintaining all. So, I mean, I'm a little older, so in my time initially, it was not also equal distribution of taking care of things, of kids, etc., between men and women like it is today. So it has not been easy, but nevertheless, it is possible. It is possible. That's what I'm trying to always encourage women. I think there are two key issues, the way that I look at it. One is at a young age, say high school or even before, encourage women to take up physical sciences, not to shy away from or be, a little afraid of majoring in the physical sciences. This one has to recognize this is the basis for science eventually. And second, that it is possible to make progress, and regardless, you don't have to avoid having families if you want to have a career. Not like that at all.
Stephanie, would you like to expand upon this?
Absolutely. You know, it's not an easy thing. We all wear a lot of hats. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm not just my career. And I've learned, my daughter's now 10, she's in 4th grade, but when she was little, it was very hard to balance. It was kind of chaos. But I learned over time that I can't wear all the hats at once, and I can't kind of wear 2 hats at once. I have to kind of pick a lane. I can't multitask. So I have to, I have to be at work, or I have to be a mom, or I have to sort of balance each thing and kind of make time for each part of who I am. And, and so I went to a women's college, I went to Hood in Frederick, and for a long time we've heard things like you can't pour from an empty cup. So you have to make time for yourself too, because it's really hard to do the rest of it if you don't make time for what you're interested in, like being a mentor, or other things that interest you or keep you going. You have to make time for those things, even if it's inconvenient for the people around you. You have to just, as has been said before, self-advocate. You have to advocate for your time, and that helps you balance everything else.
Thank you, Stephanie, for putting it all together. I'd like to open it up for questions from our attendees. I think we already have a number of questions. As a reminder, please post your questions in the chat to everybody and indicate if you'd like to pose it to specific panelists. The first question I'd like to address is, how did you each find your mentors? I think I would love for everybody to speak about this very, very briefly, of just how do you find your mentors? I'll start with Uma.
Mine were very informal, Maggie. So this was, one of them was my master's thesis advisor, but others were actually at work. These were people who saw what was, what I could actually contribute towards science and encouraged those attributes. And I think that's where maybe, as some of the other panelists have alluded to, finding that right environment, finding that right team who constantly encouraged you to do more, I think is important. So these were very informal relationships, I would say.
Yana?
Yeah, so as I said, like mentors, like some senior students or some senior postdocs during my career development were my mentors. But some of the formal mentors I found, first one, my PhD advisor, I found actually during my undergrad studies. I like the subject, I like the communication, how we communicate. But then later on, I would find mentors at conferences. Scientific area you like, you go to conference, you see you can establish a nice, meaningful relationship, so you go with that. Once I found a mentor by just looking at the publication list, and I like the publication, so I emailed them, and we, that's how we started. So there are different ways how to approach that. So.
Mary?
I joke with people when they ask me how do I find my mentors. I say I didn't. They found me because I grew up in Frederick, Maryland. I went to high school in Frederick, Maryland, and then the NCI was growing in Frederick, Maryland, and I was very interested in HIV research, and I was active in the sort of HIV activist community in the 80s. And so I'd hoped that that's what I would do with my career was to do HIV research. Well, the most famous retrovirologists in the world, many of them came here. So I just applied, for positions in their labs, and was fortunate enough to secure a position at the NCI doing HIV research, where I've been for more than 20 years now. So, but that's not helpful advice to others, right? Because probably that's a very unusual situation. They're probably not going to just fall in your lap, some of the best retrovirologists in the world, if you want to do HIV research. But so what I tell people who ask me this question is to do the research, find the area of science that you're interested in, read the papers, and then just send emails to the senior author or the corresponding author, and say, could you meet with me? I'd love to talk to you about your research. I'd love to have a mentoring meeting. I have never heard where someone has said no. Sometimes I haven't heard back, maybe because maybe somebody's busy and they did miss the email, but I have never heard anybody who said that they said no. And they always meet with them. And then, you know, you get the advice to try to get into the area of research that you're interested in and you know, and network, and you'll meet more and more people and find the appropriate mentors for you.
For me, the key, first of all, the question, the novelty, the challenge of the question that the question posed, because nothing like that existed before. And the question, can I do it? How to do it? How to approach it? And I understood that the question is very important. And at that time, people tried to do it, and they did only what the status was such that it was only very limited, the solutions that were obtained. So it was not really very practical. So that's what drew me, and I could see that this young man who came from Cambridge at the time was open-minded, very original, and so that's what drew me. It was the science, it was the question, the novelty, the challenge, and the openness of the mentor. Then he was not my mentor still, but still, I mean, that's what drew me. I think it's very important. To me, you have to like the problem, the area, and the specific problems that you're going to face. You have to be very interested in this in order to take them up and to make progress, because we know in science we devote a lot of time to work. If you are not really attracted and really interested in what you do, and I must say this, so I shifted over the years, of course, several times, but still that particular thing of the challenge, the originality, the novelty, taking it up and trying to address the problem still remains this day. I think this is this is a major driving force.
Yeah, and those are certainly great traits for a mentor. Stephanie, do you want to address the question of finding mentors?
The answer is very similar to Mary's. My sort of formative mentors found me, saw potential in me, and kind of pulled me forward. But then at different parts of my career, like as was mentioned earlier, I don't work in a lab anymore. And when I was in graduate school, that's when I sort of realized, very similar to what Uma said, when I was in the lab, I liked the work, but I didn't like the work, the finishing part. Like I didn't find publishing nearly as exciting as I expected to. So then I sought out mentors that could help me figure out how I could take my doctorate and do something with it elsewhere. And so I've found people within my university to help me, figure out and learn more about different careers. And that's really how I wound up at the USPTO, because they would bring in job fairs, those kinds of things, and they would have different panelists come in to speak. And so I would make connections that way and learn more about the potential of what you can do as a scientist outside of the research lab. And then networking. Honestly, until I started doing women-to-women mentoring, I didn't really do a whole lot of networking because, science is science, whatever. But the networking part of it is actually so crucial, and making that connection with your community of other scientists is so important. And that's what I really tell to my any of the mentees that I've dealt with. Network. Go, as some of the other mentors have told me, LinkedIn. Go on LinkedIn, find connections, see what you're interested in, and network, really. So
Thank you. Carla, if you're on, I hope you still are with us. Do you mind turning on your camera? I'd love to. We have another question for you.
Sure.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for being on. One of the questions for you is, how do we help young girls recognize that they can do hard things, quote unquote, like math and science?
Oh. Wow, that is a great question. I guess off the cuff, I would say exposure early, and kind of going to my go-to means that we have to start changing the environment for them, making sure that all children are exposed to math and science in quality schools. And that equity in educational quality is so important. I'm a product of public schools, and I did okay with public education. So I think that's something that we can all do, is to make sure that we're reaching into our local schools, and organizations like Women to Women Mentoring and many other organizations. I just heard from someone on the call, Lily, about her organization that she has. So making sure that we are building up those communities so that all children, and especially girls, and especially girls of color, and especially girls from underrepresented and marginalized communities, have that opportunity to be exposed. And I think with that exposure, again, I'll go back to my spiel here, that you're going to find your niche, you're going to find your gift, you're going to find your strength. And I think I heard one of the panelists say, realizing that she loved science, but how to move that into a career. So after the exposure, I would say that's where mentors come in, and early mentors, making sure that young women get exposed to opportunities such as science camps and math camps. Coding camps. I just referred our group here to Black Girls Code, which is a national group that exposes young women and supports young women in data sciences fields. So I think we all can have a hand in making sure that young girls feel that they can do it, because we can bring them to that space and support them there.
Carla, I would like to add to this what you said. I totally agree with everything. I mean, it's just common sense what you're saying. But I would like to add to this. We focus here on the contribution of the mentors, and of course, I mean, as we discussed, it's hugely important. But I think what is also very important is the family, your environment where you grow. Definitely, it was the case for me, and I think it is very common, the attitude of parents, aunts, uncles, etc., etc. So I think that if one approach, in my case, I was fortunate. Already my father was in science, my aunt was in science, etc. And then I married, my husband was in science even before I started my going back to school. But I think in general, if one can also approach, say, the family and try to emphasize to them how important it is to support a little girl.
Certainly goes to mentoring, and mentoring can be family or externally in your schools and in organizations that we're mentioning here. Carla, would you like to address how you found your mentors? We did ask all the panelists. And
Sure, I'll share it. I think my story is pretty much the same. When I thought about today's discussion, I did think about who my mentors were. I named several of them during my talk, but this morning I was thinking, well, who were my earliest mentors? And just as Ruth said, that was my family. And I'm always very proud to say, you know, as a Black woman in America, that I'm literally only 5 generations from an ancestor who was born an enslaved person. And I always like, when I have a platform, to say that our young students and emerging scholars of color often say that we are our ancestors' wildest dreams. But I say, I think we are our ancestors' intentions. And so my mentors, of course, were family members who had 6th and 8th grade educations. High school, you know, my mom was able to go to college, but she was a teacher. And where do I end up? I'm literally sitting in a classroom right now because I observed her and the passion that she put into her work. My dad actually worked in a factory pretty much his entire life. And I didn't know until he passed away that he was actually a good writer, and that's one of my strengths. So I inherited that. And even though I didn't necessarily see it, someone in a science field, those doors were open to me because my family said, look, you're not limited in what you can do. Go in the direction that you want to go in. And they supported me in that. I think Ruth's point is very, very true. And everybody, understand, doesn't have that family support. And so that's where building that community around them, your local organizations, your boys and girls clubs, civic organizations in your community can be so important to reach out, because families often aren't comfortable reaching out or maybe don't know. So that we need to reach out and make those connections and offer those opportunities. So those are my earliest mentors, obviously. And then coming to this space, I'm sitting on the campus at Howard University right now. So I said that my earliest mentor identified me and identified the potential. But I do agree with the discussions around reaching out and being an advocate. And I just taken 2 calls during this meeting for people who want to reach out and have a conversation. And so that is so powerful to just reach out. And sometimes, yes, we do miss the email, but as much as we can, we want to sit down and listen and talk and see where we can be helpful. So I think we can be advocates for ourselves, as people have already said, to find mentors.
That's terrific. And I think we should end it at this point. We are at 5 minutes until the end of the meeting. Thank you so much, everybody, for all of your input. Thank you, Carla, Ruth, Yana, Uma, Mary, and Stephanie, for placing a lens on women in science, letting us celebrate our successes. Your devotion to advancing women in science is admirable and of course necessary. So thank you all for bringing this to attention. I am now going to pass it on to Anne to conclude the meeting. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Maggie. And again, thank you to our panelists, and especially again, Maggie, for moderating such an important discussion. And our last thanks goes out to our participants for taking the time to attend Women in Science Speak. Unfortunately, we had quite a few individuals who couldn't join us today by phone and could only join us by phone today. So although you couldn't see our panelists, I hope you were able to listen and learn from these very inspirational women. And also, I just want to say that regrettably, Ashley Waters of Women to Women Mentoring could not join the webinar today due to technical difficulties. And so thank you to Ashley for being such an important partner to us. Ashley leads the organization for women in Frederick, and she serves as a role model every day and a mentor every day to women. So again, thank you to Ashley, and sorry that she couldn't join us today. So please look for an email with a link to the recording, and then we will also share some of the panelists' email addresses and information about Frederick National Laboratory and Women to Women Mentoring, and how you can support mentoring in Frederick and become a part of the Women to Women Mentoring community. So just in closing, today we've recognized the role of women in science, women and girls in science, not only as beneficiaries, but also of agents of change. As a final call to action, as we go back into our communities, let's commit to celebrating, inspiring, and mentoring women, as it is one way we will start to see sustainable movement in the STEM gender gap. Thank you for joining us today, and have a great Friday and a great weekend. Take care.